Okay, let's talk about unpredictable momentum.
Right.
Because, usually when we look at a simulation, or any sports season really, we crave patterns, we look for those safe bets.
We definitely do. We look at the data from season 11, we look at the team sheets, and we say, okay, this team is a fortress at home.
Exactly. Or we say this team is in a rebuilding phase, it feels comfortable, it feels predictable.
And that comfort is exactly what gets you in trouble in a dice-based league.
It really is. Because we are looking at the fallout from AFT Dice Season 12, Round 2 today. And honestly, if you were betting on the status quo, you probably had a very, very bad weekend.
Yeah, you did.
The dice didn't just roll, they seemed to have a vendetta against logic.
A vendetta against logic is, well, it's a bit poetic, but statistically, you're not wrong.
Right.
Round 2 wasn't just about upsets. It was about the magnitude of the variance. We didn't just see favorites lose. We saw invincible home grounds breached. We saw defensive structures completely evaporate. And we saw score lines that, frankly, look like typos.
They really do. I'm checking the source material we have for this deep dive, the official Round 2 summary. Upset at the GABA. And that headline, it feels like it's burying the lead a bit.
It does.
We're talking about massive structural shockwaves sent through the league.
It was absolutely a week of extremes, and our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack why this happened.
Right. We aren't just going to list the scores for you.
Exactly. We need to look at the mechanics of these collapses.
Yeah.
How does a team lose a 24-point lead? How does a quote-unquote fortress crumble?
Yeah.
And what does this tell us about the volatility of the current simulation engine?
So let's start with the big one, the one that arguably broke everyone's brackets. The fortress breached. Richmond versus the Brisbane Lions up at the GABA.
This was the marquee matchup for a reason. And to understand the sheer shock of this result, you have to understand the context of the GABA in this league.
Yeah, let's set the scene for you, the listener, especially if you're new to the lore here. The GABA isn't just a stadium. In the AFT, it historically carries this massive home ground advantage modifier.
It absolutely does. It's the humidity variable, the travel fatigue for the opposition, the crowd noise modifier. Usually, when a team like Richmond travels up to the GABA, the simulation effectively starts them at a severe disadvantage.
You're playing uphill from the opening bound.
Exactly. Brisbane's entire identity over the last few seasons has been built around this narrative. The idea that, hey, we might lose on the road, but we do not lose at home.
Which is why the first half of this game felt so normal.
It felt very standard.
The source material literally describes it as a wrestle. It was tight. It felt like Brisbane was just doing what they always do, waiting for Richmond to tire out.
That is the script, the GABA grind. You keep it close, and then in the second half, those home modifiers really kick in, the away team's stamina rolls drop, and Brisbane runs away with the game.
Right.
But that is emphatically not what happened here.
No, it wasn't. And this is where I want your take on the mechanics of the engine. Richmond didn't just survive the second half, they exploded.
They did.
The report calls it a massive third-quarter surge.
The third quarter is becoming a really interesting data point this season, actually. What we saw from Richmond was a statistical anomaly in their possession conversion.
How so?
Well, in that third quarter, they weren't just winning the ball, they were scoring on almost every single inside 50 entry. They flipped the pressure gauge entirely. Instead of the away team fading like the algorithm usually dictates, they accelerated.
It's almost like the halftime oranges were spiked with adrenaline or something. They went from hanging in there to utterly dominant in the span of 20 minutes.
And look at the final separation. Richmond, 16 goals, 13 behinds. That's 109. To Brisbane, 13 goals, 13 behinds, 91.
An 18-point loss for the hosts.
Right, but the key number there isn't the 18 points. It's the 109 points conceded.
That is a huge total for a defensive powerhouse to give up on their home deck.
Exactly. If you're conceding 109 points at the GABA, your defensive structure has completely failed. The whole fortress concept relies on choking the opposition's scoring channels. Richmond just blew right through them.
So what does this mean for the Lions? Does this bust the myth? Is the GABA just another patch of grass now?
I wouldn't go quite that far after just one game, but it definitely shatters that aura of invincibility. It tells the rest of the league that the home advantage modifier isn't enough to save you if your midfield isn't winning the contest.
Right.
Richmond proved that sheer momentum can override geography.
Momentum overrides geography. I really like that. It sounds like a bumper sticker for round 2.
It fits perfect.
Because if we travel down south to the MCG, we saw another incredible example of momentum just completely ignoring expectations. Melbourne versus Carlton.
And this game was a statement.
Context is crucial here for you listening. Melbourne was coming off a round 1 heartbreaker.
A really tough loss.
And we've all seen teams spiral after a bad loss to start the season. The narrative usually goes into overdrive. Are they in trouble? Is their confidence shot?
That's the standard psychological model in sports, yeah.
Doubts creep in. You hesitate on your roles. You play conservative. But Melbourne, they came out and played like they were angry at the very concept of losing.
Dismantled is the word used in the summary. And honestly, looking at the numbers, that feels kind of polite.
It was a demolition. And the scary part for the rest of the league was the pure speed of it. They didn't grind Carlton down slowly. They built a 27-point lead by halftime.
In a dice game, a 27-point halftime lead is enormous.
That's a mountain to climb.
It forces the trailing team to take massive risks just to catch up.
Right, which usually leads to turnovers, which leads to more goals for the leader. It's a vicious snowball effect.
But let's look at the final score, because this number is just popping off the page for me. Melbourne defeated Carlton 22.13 to 16.13. That is 145 to 109.
To sit with that number for a second, 145 points.
In modern dice mechanics, getting to 100 is a good day. Getting to 100 is a blowout. What does 145 actually tell us about their strategy? To hit 145 in this system, you aren't just rolling well. You have to be maxing out your possession chains constantly.
Right.
It implies that Melbourne basically abandoned defense entirely and just said, we are going to outshoot you. It's a glass cannon strategy. All offense, zero breaks.
It feels incredibly high risk.
It is. But when it pays off, it's terrifying to watch. They forced Carlton into a pure shootout, and to Carlton's credit, they scored 109 points.
That's the wild part.
In a normal week, 109 wins you the game comfortably.
Carlton didn't play badly, at least offensively. They just ran into an absolute buzzsaw.
Exactly. Melbourne basically said, we don't care if you score because we are going to score more. It's a huge psychological blow to the rest of the competition.
It really is.
It says if you want to beat Melbourne this year, you better bring your shooting boots, because a defensive lockdown just isn't going to work against this barrage.
It's the we challenge you to a duel strategy. I love it. But moving on, I want to talk about a game that had a very different flavor of drama. Let's look at the defending premiers. The Gold Coast Suns hosting St. Kilda at Metricon Stadium.
This is the game I've been thinking about the most since reading the report, because it's basically a Rorschach test for how you view a champion team.
Okay, let's set the scene. You're the Gold Coast Suns. You've got the trophy in the cabinet. You're at home. You're playing St. Kilda. You expect a nice, polite victory lap.
And instead, you get punched right in the mouth.
Hard. The source describes it as an early panic, an early scare. But scare implies a ghost popping out of a closet. This was a structural disaster.
It really was.
Trailing by 24 points at the end of the first quarter.
24 points down in the first. For a defending premier at home against what many consider a mid-tier side, that is catastrophic. The algorithm gives a team down by 24 in the first quarter something like a 12% chance of winning.
So the alarm bells are ringing loudly, the fans are nervous, but then we get the resilient surge.
They completely flipped the script. They came out in the second half and just suffocated St. Kilda.
The final score ended up being Gold Coast 17.10 to St. Kilda 13.11. That's a 23-point home win for the Suns, 112 to 89.
Right.
Now, if you just check the scores on Monday morning without watching, you'd think, oh, comfortable win for the Suns.
But it was anything but comfortable.
So here is the debate, and I really want to push you on this. The source posits two distinct ways to view this result.
Okay.
View A, this is proof of steady progress and championship resilience. They played terribly, stayed calm, and won anyway. View B, falling behind by 24 points to St. Kilda shows a massive, dangerous sign of vulnerability. Which side are you on?
Look, I know the romantic answer is resilient.
Of course.
We all love the comeback story. But if I'm being purely analytical about the simulation, I am leaning hard toward vulnerability.
Really? You're not giving them credit for the fix.
Fixing a problem is great, but why was the problem there in the first place? You cannot rely on a 24-point comeback as a sustainable strategy.
But they won by 23. That is a 47-point turnaround during the game.
Against St. Kilda. With all due respect to the Saints, if Gold Coast tries that first quarter against Melbourne, the Melbourne team that just dropped 145 points,
yeah, that's a good point.
you give Melbourne a 24-point head start, you aren't catching them. You're losing by 50. The Suns' midfield efficiency in that first quarter was abysmal. That's not just jitters. That's a structural issue.
So you're saying the win is just papering over the cracks?
I'm saying the coaching staff shouldn't be celebrating the comeback. They should be terrified of that first quarter. It is a massive warning shot. If they don't tighten that up, they are going to get punished by the top-tier teams.
Fair enough. It's better to learn a lesson with a win than a loss, I guess. But speaking of lessons learned, let's talk about the teams that clearly learned their lesson from round one.
The bounce backs.
Yes, the theme of bounce-back blowouts.
This was the defining trend of the round for me. We saw this fascinating pattern where teams that were humiliated in round one didn't just win in round two, they went absolutely nuclear.
It's like they spent the entire week stewing in anger and just unleashed it all at once. Let's run through the list because it's pretty extensive. First up, the Geelong Cats.
They were responding to what the report explicitly called a round one humiliation. And their response, they thrashed the Western Bulldogs by 59 points.
59 points. The final score was 133-74.
That is a complete 180-degree turn. To go from a humiliation to a 59-point win suggests that the round one loss wasn't a mechanical skill issue, it was an attitude or effort issue.
Right.
They fixed the attitude, and the skills immediately followed.
Then we have the Sydney Swans. They went on the road to the Adelaide Oval to play Port Adelaide. Now, Adelaide Oval is another one of those notoriously tough road trips.
It's incredibly hostile territory in the simulation.
Didn't matter at all. Sydney won by 46 points. The report calls it the biggest away win of the season so far. A demolition.
And again, note the margin there. These aren't scrap-for-the-points wins. These are massive percentage boosters.
Which is huge.
In a dice league, margin matters heavily for the latter.
Yeah.
Sydney didn't just want the 4 points. They wanted to repair their percentage after round one.
Hawthorn fits this upward trajectory pattern, too. They traveled to play Fremantle.
And pulled off a 30-point road win.
Yeah.
But look at the specific method, fueled by a 21-goal performance.
We're seeing that high-scoring trend again.
It is everywhere this round. It really feels like the defensive algorithms haven't quite caught up to the offensive strategies yet this season. Everyone is scoring heavy.
And finally, in this bounce-back group, we have the West Coast Eagles. They found redemption at their quote-unquote home fortress, Optus Stadium.
And unlike Brisbane, their fortress actually worked.
It held up. But the specific mechanic of the win is what interests me. They beat GWS by 26 points, but it was fueled by another third-quarter explosion.
We just keep seeing this. Richmond, West Coast, and even Adelaide, who we should definitely mention, all use that third term to completely break their games open.
Yeah, Adelaide proved to be a really dangerous third-quarter team. They overcame an early North Melbourne lead to win by 27.
It raises a serious question about conditioning and halftime adjustments in the simulation. Why are so many games pivoting so violently in the third quarter?
What's your read on it?
It suggests that the simulated coaches are making tactical shifts at halftime, that the losing teams just aren't countering effectively.
Or maybe it's just that the dice engine has a momentum variable that kicks in much harder after the main break?
That's the classic black box theory of the engine. It's very possible that consecutive successful rolls are generating a multiplier effect. If you get hot in the third, you stay hot.
Which brings us to the broader analysis of the round. When we zoom out and look at the stat sheet for round two, there are some really weird anomalies that we need to flag.
The stats are genuinely peculiar this week.
The one that jumps out at me and connects right back to our Fortress Breached intro is the away anomaly.
Right. Visiting teams took the points in 5 out of the 9 matches.
More than half the league won away from home.
That is a massive deviation from the historical data. In Season 11, the home win rate was something like 60 to 65%. For the away teams to be the majority winners in a single round, that is highly significant.
Why do you think that is? Is the travel factor nerfed this season?
It's possible the simulation parameters for crowd influence or travel fatigue have been tweaked down behind the scenes. Or, and this is my preferred theory, the gap between the good teams and the bad teams is just wider than the home advantage modifier right now.
Can you explain that mechanic a bit more?
Sure. If the home advantage gives you, say, a +5 bonus on your rolls, but your team is fundamentally 10 points worse than the opposition in big stats, you still lose by 5.
Ah, I see. So raw talent beats geography.
Exactly. If Sydney is just that much better than Port Adelaide mathematically, the fact that the game is in Adelaide doesn't matter. The skill gap just swallows the home advantage whole.
That's a really refreshing thought, actually. It means the latter is becoming a truer reflection of skill rather than just who had the easier fixture list with more home games.
Theoretically, yes. It makes for a much purer competition.
But then there's the other factor the report mentions, the dice factor. The extreme swings. We had 4 major blowouts of 30 points or more.
This really highlights the volatility of the engine. We aren't seeing many close grinding games. We're seeing one team get on top and then just completely crush the other.
Why is that happening mechanically?
In dice mechanics, we call it crit stacking or momentum chains.
Yeah.
When a team starts rolling well, high accuracy, high possession, it naturally deprives the other team of the ball.
Right.
You can't roll for a comeback if you never actually get the dice.
Right. Possession is absolutely king.
And teams like Melbourne, Geelong, and Sydney clearly dominated those possession rolls. They starved the opposition. A 30-point blowout is just the mathematical result of having the dice in your hand for 70% of the game.
It feels like there's no middle ground right now. You either win a nail-biter like the Suns, or you blow them off the park.
Or you get blown off the park. It's feast or famine.
Look at Essendon. They had an 11-point win over Collingwood at Marvel Stadium.
And that was wire to wire, leading from the opening bounce. That's the feast mode. They got the lead early and just held it. They didn't let Collingwood get a single sniff of momentum.
So, if we synthesize all of this, what is the core story of round 2? What is the headline for you listening?
The story is that no one is safe.
Comforting.
No, really.
Yeah.
Think about it. If Brisbane can lose at the Gabba, if the defending premiers can be down 24 points in the first quarter,
Right.
if Melbourne can score 145 points, the league is in a state of extremely high flux.
High flux, I like that.
The old rules, win at home, go 50-50 away, they just don't seem to apply right now. The hierarchy hasn't settled at all.
It feels like the chaos engine has been turned up to 11.
And for us analyzing it, that's fantastic. For the coaches, probably a nightmare.
I want to circle back to something we touched on with Gold Coast. I want to leave you, the listener, with a bit of a reflection on style versus substance.
Okay, go on.
We saw two very different types of victories this week. We saw Melbourne's raw scoring power, 145 points of just pure offensive destruction, and we saw Gold Coast's mental toughness, clawing back from the absolute brink of disaster.
Both led to 4 points on the ladder.
Right. But they require very different algorithmic skill sets. So, listener, ask yourself, which is more impressive to you? Would you rather your team have the firepower to blow everyone away like Melbourne, or the grit to survive when absolutely everything goes wrong like Gold Coast?
It's the eternal sports question. Offense is sexy. It sells tickets. Everyone wants to see 145 points on the board. But grit wins finals. In a grand final, when the pressure is maxed out and the dice rolls are incredibly tight, you aren't going to score 145. You're going to be in a dogfight.
Yeah.
And Gold Coast proved they can win a dogfight. I'm not sure Melbourne has proved that yet.
That is a great point. Can Melbourne win ugly? We don't know yet.
We only know they can win pretty.
And here's one final provocative thought for you to chew on before our next discussion. We talked about that away dominance. 5 out of 9 away teams won. The Gabba was breached. Sydney demolished Port in Adelaide.
Where are you going with this?
Well, if fortresses are crumbling left and right, does home ground advantage actually exist in Season 12? Or is it just a psychological crutch that teams and fans are finally starting to kick away?
That is a very dangerous thought for the marketing teams selling season tickets.
Maybe. But think about it. If the stats show that talent overrides location, maybe the dice just don't care where they were rolled.
If the dice truly don't care about geography, then we are in for the most unpredictable season in history.
And I, for one, am here for the chaos. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll be back next round to see if the trend holds or if the Empire strikes back.
Until then.